Welcome to another episode of the Better Dental Life podcast. Now, this is the third episode I'm talking about happiness. And I'm talking about this a lot because we ultimately are the most important part of having success in our practices and our lives. And if we're not happy, if we're not loving life, if we're not having fun, then our practices are going to suffer. And when our practices suffer, that makes it harder for us to have fun. It makes it harder for us to be happy. And we get in this spiral where we just kind of keep getting worse and worse and worse. We're suffering, we're not having fun, and then our practices suffer. We're not interacting with our teams. We're not engaging with our patients like we should or want to. Our teams maybe aren't getting the focus that they need from us and the energy that they need from us to be successful and to be enthusiastic about their jobs. And so then our teams suffer. And it just kind of this downward spiral. And we want to reverse that spiral. And to reverse that, we're not waiting for our practice to suddenly turn around or our teams to be complete or to be amazing around us. Then we feel happy. No, the way we change that and reverse that cycle is to find happiness now. And there's a lot of things that we do, a lot of habits that are just nature, human nature for us, that can get in the way of us finding happiness. Now, it is our human nature to seek happiness, to find that, but part of our brain, part of our psychology and the survival techniques that our brain has established is to look for things that are wrong. And when we look for things that are wrong, we focus on things that are wrong too much, we start to find them. And if we want to seek, if we have our focus is to seek hope, to seek joy, to seek peace, we're going to find that. If we look for reasons to be grateful, we're going to find that. But if we look for reasons to be angry, to doubt, to be bitter or alone, we're going to find that as well. So what we focus on is going to be what we find. And our brain, when it's finding these things that are wrong in our life, or maybe warns us of something that's going to maybe be embarrassing, or we have fear because there's something that's scary up ahead, our brain is doing its job. There's nothing wrong with us. We just need to supervise our brain. We just haven't been taught how to supervise our brain. We've just been letting it run wild. It's like a toddler running around with a knife, and we need to supervise that toddler. We need to take control of the supervision of our brain and not just let the world happen to us. So some of the habits that we fall into when we don't supervise our brain is allowing it to focus on those things that are wrong. And what is wrong is always going to be there, but so is what is right. And so we can focus on what is right and what is important to us. Now, we talked about what exactly happiness is. And a part of that is the emotion to feel happy. And that's why we want to focus on those times in our lives that we actually can feel that emotion of joy. That's the primary emotion that we think of as happy. It's an emotion that provides a temporary reward signal when one of our values are being met, when we're meeting our needs, when we've honored our primary human needs. And we feel this joy when we take action that fulfills these physical and these psychological needs. Now, happiness, though, is not just that emotion and having that regularly throughout our day. Happiness and a true fulfilling life is also to have significant meaning in our life, having a substantive reason for living. And this includes being a part of something that's larger than ourselves. And we talked about in the last episode that this is our spirituality, our connection to God or the universe or nature, something bigger than us. And then the third part of this happiness, this third part of having a fulfilling life and being happy, is a sense of life satisfaction. When we evaluate our life, when we look internally, we evaluate our lives as having a high quality and as being fulfilling. And this is kind of that self-assessment that we do in our lives. Now, happiness is all three of these parts because we're not going to have the emotion of joy. We're not going to have the emotion of happiness all the time. In fact, we are going to feel happy emotions or positive emotions about half the time in our lives, and we're going to feel negative emotions about half the time in our lives. And if you tell me that you're never feeling negative emotions, then I would tell you you're not trying hard enough because you're not stretching enough to feel disappointed. You're not stretching enough to lean into fear. And then eventually you're going to feel bored. If you just sit on a beach and you're sipping drinks and relaxing, that can feel good for a little while, But after a few days, you're going to get bored of that. You're going to want something that challenges you. And when we lean into something that challenges us, then we're going to feel some emotions that are less comfortable to us, some that we kind of think of as negative. So emotions really don't define our happiness, though they're a part of it. Recognizing those regular happy emotions is a part of that happiness. And recognizing when we feel those negative emotions that they're for our good, that they're our brain warning us of something ahead. We feel disappointment because we had something we wanted and we didn't get it. And if we didn't feel disappointed, we never try. Our brain helps us feel fear because we're trying something new. And the pathway to growth, it always goes through fear. In fact, if you were to kind of map out that growth, we have to go through the stages of growth. And the first is just now, where we're not doing anything. And then we have an idea of something we may want, or an idea of something to become better, but it's an unknown. And so the next phase of growth is fear. And it's not until we step through that fear and lean into that fear, until we do that, we're not going to have the opportunity to grow. So part of this supervising our brain is understanding that we have these positive emotions, we have these negative emotions. But that isn't the whole piece to happiness. If that was all there was to happiness, is the emotion of happiness, then we'd feel happy about half the time and negative about half the time. And some people even more, because they're only focusing on the negative emotions. They're only thinking about those emotions that are negative, and they allow that to consume their lives. But because happiness is so much more, happiness is also having significant meaning in our life and a life satisfaction, evaluating our lives as high quality and fulfilling. That's also an important part of happiness. So when you bring all of those together, then we can live fulfilling lives. We can feel happy. So then what are those habits? What gets in our way of feeling happy? What are those things that can, I guess, destroy the habits that destroy happiness? And the first is that we're focusing on the negative. We're focusing on the wrong things. We're focusing on what's wrong with our life. And part of this focus has to do with the way we build a model of our world, or it's like our blueprint for our lives. And we all have a blueprint for what we think our life should be like. And we've been building this blueprint from an early stage, and we've been filling in pieces to that, or we've been adding to that and adjusting and changing that blueprint. But when our reality doesn't match our blueprint, it doesn't feel good. And so we're going to start to feel some emotional pain because of that. Our reality isn't matching this blueprint. Our world isn't matching what we wanted our world to be, or what we think our world should be. And if we feel like we are powerless to change that, if we feel like we can't do anything about it, then we're really going to suffer. But we have control of two things. One, we can change our reality. We can also change our blueprint. And so if our blueprint is so inflexible that we're not going to allow any adjustment to it, then we're going to have suffering. And if we have such a fixed mindset that believes that we don't have the ability to change, or we don't have the ability to grow and lean into a different blueprint, or lean into our existing blueprint, then we're going to suffer. So one of those habits in focusing on what's wrong is looking how our life doesn't match our blueprint. So we want to look at, what is our blueprint? What does that mean? Well, it can be our families. Is our family dynamic exactly how we thought it should be? Are our relationships how we thought they should be? Are they going, our relationship with our children, our relationship with our loved ones? What about our practices? And are they exactly like the blueprint that we built when we started out, when we decided, hey, I want to be a dentist? And when we decided I want to be a practice owner, and we built in our minds this blueprint for what that looked like? Or are we struggling with insurance reimbursements? Are we struggling with employees and understanding them and meeting their needs and building a team around us? And so if these things are not matching the blueprint we built, then we're going to feel pain, and we're going to focus on all those little things that are wrong instead of, hey, maybe we should look at all the things that are right with our blueprint and all the things that are amazing with our blueprint. We talk about the steps to have happiness, and part of that is gratitude. We even had some gratitude exercise in the last episode we talked about doing. And if we have the habit of looking at what's wrong instead of a habit of gratitude, then that's going to destroy our happiness. It's going to chip away at our feeling of fulfillment. Part of building our model of the world is also about the things that we want to feel, and some that we really value a lot. There's these emotions that we really value and emotions that we may do almost anything to avoid. For example, we may want to avoid at all cost feeling embarrassed, and that just may terrify us. And the idea of embarrassment just gets in the way of us even wanting to do some public speaking or get in front of a group, because what if we were embarrassed? Or what if we said something stupid and I was embarrassed? So we may do almost anything to avoid some of these emotions. And there are others that will do almost anything to get. We may say, hey, I will do almost anything to feel love. Or I will do almost anything to feel success. And I'll do almost anything to avoid failure. And then as we build the model of the world, we decide what it will take for us to feel each of these feelings. And we write rules about them in our head. And we don't do this consciously. We don't do this, we don't write this down and share this with anybody. But this is happening in our brain based on our past experiences. And our brain starts to write some rules about it. And so it may say, I'm going to feel embarrassed and rejected anytime I make a mistake in front of other people. Or I may feel embarrassed anytime somebody chuckles when I do something stupid. And then we may have rules for those feelings that we value a great deal. Like, I only feel love when my kids are listening to me and do everything I say, and they come and say, Dad, you're great, and give me a hug. And if we make these rules really difficult to achieve, then we're going to have a hard time feeling them. And we tend to make rules to feel good really, really hard. And we tend to make rules to feel bad really, really easy. And so one of the habits that destroy our happiness are making it really easy to feel bad and really hard to feel good. So if we define success and make that really, really difficult, if we define success in our practice, and I'm only going to feel success in my practice when I reach a certain production goal and my team is completely whole and I never have a negative outcome with my patients and none of my fillings need to be redone, none of my crowns ever break, none of my implants fail. If those are the rules we set up for success, then we've made it really, really hard to feel success. And if we say, hey, I'm going to do almost anything, I hate feeling failure. And I'm going to feel failure anytime I place an implant and it doesn't succeed. Or I'm going to feel failure anytime a patient comes dissatisfied because their ceramic crown broke. Or they had pain after I placed a crown. And so if we make it really easy to feel failure and really hard to feel success, then we're going to have a hard time finding that happiness. We're going to have a hard time feeling good and making it really easy to feel bad. And so we can reverse that. We can change the rules. Those rules are just rules we've made up. We can decide, hey, I'm going to have success and feel success anytime I do my best. Anytime I give everything I've got with integrity for my patients to make sure I'm giving them the best treatment I possibly can. That's success for me. That's a much better rule because I have complete control in that. Nothing is out of my control. And maybe I say, I'm only going to feel failure when I violate my values. When I do something or I push a treatment on a patient that isn't in their best interest. Well, that's really easy to not feel that because I have complete control over that. Because I can always look at what I believe in. I can always offer them the best treatment. I can always do my best. So one of the habits that we tend to have to make it hard to feel happy is writing rules around emotions that make it super, super easy to feel bad and really, really hard to feel good. And we can reverse that. Interesting with emotions too is we avoid feeling bad. We avoid so much and we shy away from negative feelings so much that the next thing we do to destroy happiness is to numb those feelings. Whenever we feel a lot of fear, when we feel anxiety, we feel worried. And if that starts to consume us, we don't like that negative feeling, then we as humans numb that emotion. And how do we numb that emotion? Well, the obvious is with alcohol, with drugs, but we can also numb those emotions by tuning out our brains with social media or with television and not facing our reality. Some people do that with shopping, and oftentimes addictive behavior is going to be numbing our emotions. And so whatever we're doing to numb our emotions, to try to give us a temporary rush, something that may feel kind of good, a substitute emotion, like substances like alcohol or drugs, but also with social media and maybe a rush from some likes in social media or watching a movie, we're going to feel this temporary kind of substitute emotion to numb or to buffer our negative emotions. That's going to destroy our happiness. We need to get comfortable with leaning into negative emotions. We need to get comfortable with them and recognize them for what they are. Hey, if I'm feeling really worried, we need to turn inside ourselves and say, what am I worried about? What exactly am I feeling anxious about right now? And when I recognize it, oh, okay, I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling worried because, I've got my employees are wanting more money and they want raises and my production's been down the last couple months. Well, I probably should worry about that. My brain's telling me, hey, this is something that's not going to match up. But then we take action. The way we overcome that worry is not to be numbing it, not to drink every night because we're so worried, but to take action and get excited because we can make a change. We have the power to fix all of those things. And so we can get comfortable with the worry. We can get comfortable with disappointment. We can get comfortable with fear, even get comfortable with anger, but not let it consume us. Now, when I talk about anger, that's an emotion that is natural and normal, but many times we emote. And feeling an emotion is different than emoting. Emoting is when we let that emotion out. And sometimes when we emote, that can be done in a really destructive way for us and people around us. And anger is one of those. If we emote, if we let our anger out in a really negative way, that's not feeling anger. That's emoting in a negative and an unhealthy way. Feeling anger may be very natural. That means something violated our values or we're really upset because somebody maybe turned on us. And we need to step back and say, okay, did they really do that on purpose? Are they really just trying their best and I got angry and I shouldn't have? And so we need to step back and think, okay, why did I feel angry? That's a normal emotion. That's my brain doing what it's supposed to do. Why did I feel that? And then reevaluate it. So when we feel these negative emotions, we don't need to emote. We need to feel that, recognize it, lean into it, and take action. If our negative emotions stop us from taking action, we're going to have a hard time finding happiness. We're going to have a hard time finding success. So, one, we can make it really easy for us to feel good by focusing on those things that feel good, and also by writing the rules to make it easy to feel good. And we can make it harder to feel bad by writing rules that make it harder to feel disappointed. We can tell our brain, hey, you don't need to get so disappointed so easily. Let's wait a little bit to feel disappointed until we've made multiple efforts, not the first time something goes wrong. And we can rewrite our brain and teach it and tell it when should we feel disappointed. We don't need to feel angry so easily, and we can rewrite our brain to not feel anger until something really serious happened. And so, number one, habits that destroy happiness is going to be focusing on all the things that are wrong in our world. And the next habit that is going to destroy happiness is writing rules that make it really hard to feel good and really easy to feel bad. And then the next habit that actually is going to destroy happiness is when we do feel bad, numbing that emotion or buffering that emotion, doing something to try to push that emotion down instead of feeling it, recognizing it, and taking action. Now we also turn to the wrong things for happiness. We think that something is going to make us happy, and we wait until we get that to make us happy. Now, there is nothing wrong with feeling excited about something new we bought. And we buy these things based on emotion. We buy it because of a feeling that we think we're going to get when we have that. I buy a car because I think it's going to feel great when I have that car. And now maybe I buy a car simply because I need to get to point A to point B. But if that were the case, I'd spend a lot less money on the car that I bought. I bought the car that I bought because I thought it was going to feel good, and the leather seats were amazing and the radio sounded incredible. And I imagined in that car how comfortable the drive would be and how nice it would be. And I felt an emotion linked to that car. And so there's nothing wrong with feeling that as long as we recognize it for what it is and not waiting to feel good until I have that car. So the problem with tying happiness to events or to accomplishments or to possessions is because we're going to wait until we achieve that before we allow ourselves to feel happy. That's the rule we've set. Oh, I'm going to feel happy when this happens. And as soon as that happens, we're going to have to push that a little bit further. We're going to find it something else that we need to wait for to find happiness. It's going to be temporary because we're going to feel that emotion, not true happiness in life. We're going to feel the emotion of joy for a moment, and then we're going to need the next thing. We're going to chase the next thing, waiting for that to be happiness. So that habit of waiting for things to feel that emotion of joy and thinking that's going to be happiness is going to destroy happiness. So if we think in our practices, I'm getting close to retirement. Not me. I'm saying if we're feeling like we're getting close to retirement and we can't wait for retirement because we're just starting to feel a little bit miserable, we're pretty burned out, I'm going to be happy when I retire. If I can get 5 more years of this and then I can sell my practice, I can close things down, then I'm going to be happy. Well, if that's what we're waiting for, we're going to find retirement disappointing. And so people that truly find happiness in the journey. Now we can look for that goal. We can say, hey, in 5 years, I want to be financially free and able to retire because I have some other things I want to do. I've got some hobbies I want to pursue. I have some vacations I want to take. And this part of my life, I'm going to transition to a different lifestyle. And that's going to be really exciting and I can look forward to that. That's perfectly okay. But we need to enjoy the journey and find happiness in the moment and find gratitude every day as we work towards that. Vacations are like this. And I just took a vacation to Mexico. We just got back yesterday. We're in Mexico for a week. Fantastic trip. We stayed at an incredible resort. We had a lot of activities planned. We were in Playa del Carmen area, so we were swimming in cenotes. We went to some amusement parks. We had relaxing around the resort. And so all of these activities that we had planned, planning the vacation was incredible and was exciting. And I enjoyed the planning as well as the vacation itself. In fact, vacations, oftentimes we say we can get the joy and get the happiness out of vacation 3 times. We get it in the planning, and then we get it in the vacation, and then we get it as we look back and family members, we look at the pictures and we reminisce, hey, remember that was such a great time. And yes, we swam there. That was fantastic. Do you remember that? That was wonderful. So we can enjoy vacation 3 times. And the beauty of that is that I'm not waiting for the vacation itself to feel happy. I'm excited about the planning. And I'm excited about as I look forward to that vacation. That's okay. And I can look forward to the moments that I'm going to have with my family and the connection I'm going to have with my family on that vacation. All of that is good. So when we are looking towards doing something, so if that's buying a new car, it's time for us to get a new car. We're excited about it. We can get excited about the planning. We can even get excited about the working towards it, and we can enjoy the purchase of the car. But if we're waiting until we have that to feel happy, or if we think that object in and of itself is going to make us happy, then we're going to be disappointed. So achievements aren't going to be the answer for happiness. Possessions, anything we buy, isn't going to be the answer for happiness. Fame and fortune and beauty, getting in shape. As soon as I lose 30 pounds, then I'll be happy. All of these things are okay, but they're not going to make us happy. And if we are waiting for those things to happen in our life, then we're going to be disappointed because we're not going to find the happiness there. Now, I want to talk about emotions for a bit because we have some default emotions. We talked about positive emotions. We talked about negative emotions. And if I were to ask you to list the top emotions that you feel, or even all the emotions, if you can think of all the emotions that you feel throughout your week, and you're to write them down. If you're like most people, you'll come up with about 12 emotions. Now, the English language has 500,000 words in the English language. There's over 500,000 words in the English language, one of the wordiest languages from what I understand. And there are about 3,000 words to describe emotions and feelings in the English language. I cannot come up with 3,000 for sure. And if you're like most people, you can barely come up with a dozen that you feel regularly. And so we're not very good, number one, about understanding all the nuances of our emotions and defining them. And we don't necessarily need to be. But when we look at our list, about half, and like most people, a little more than half are going to be negative emotions that we're writing down. And those are the things we're going to be focusing on, are those kind of negative emotions. They're our go-to, our default emotions. And then if we were to pick where we spend most of our time, we're going to find a couple of the positive emotions and a couple of the negative emotions that are just default emotional states. And then I want us to look at those default emotional states and decide if they're serving us. Are they good emotional states for us to be in? Because we can control that. And we control our emotional states by, one, our physiology. Meaning, what's our posture like? How are we standing? Right now, are you driving in a car listening to this? Then you can't stand up. But if you're not, how do you feel if you stand up and you lift your chin up and you smile? You're going to feel a lot different, shoulders back, smiling, standing, than you are if you're going to feel depressed. If you want to do depression, we talk about doing happiness. It's something that we actively do. If you want to do depression, then you're going to slump your shoulders. And you're going to have your head down a little bit. And your eyes are going to be down a little bit. And you let your whole physiology change. It's like you can feel it kind of sinking down into your chair or sinking down in. And so that's, if we want to feel sad, our physiology is going to turn to that sad feeling. If we want to feel happiness, if we want to feel excitement, if we want to feel energy, then we can change that too. So number one part, there's three parts to us and how we're going to get to our emotional state. Number one is going to be physiology. We've already talked about the second one, which is our focus. What are we focusing on? Are we focusing on all those things that are right? All those things that are positive? Are we focusing on what we can do, what we can accomplish? Or are we focusing on things that are out of our control and letting that destroy our emotional state? And then the third part are the voices in our head. What are the thoughts that we have? What are we telling ourselves? What are we telling ourselves about what we can do, or maybe what we can't do? Now, these voices in our head are often referred to as the coach and the critic. The coach is being like, yeah, you can do this. You can work through this. I know this is tough. You got some bad, you had some bad things happen right now, but you can work through it and you can make something positive out of this. This is going to be a great learning and growing experience. You're going to be much stronger on the other end. Or you can have the critic like, yeah, you're just not good enough. You really screwed up there. And we have both of these voices oftentimes that are going in our head, and one will become a little bit more dominant. And the one that's going to be more dominant is the one we're going to feed. We get to decide. It's not just something that happens. We get to decide, what are we going to listen to? Are we going to listen to the coach? Or are we going to listen to the critic? So the voices we listen to, those thoughts that we have, the ideas, the language that's going on in our head, what we are focusing on, and what we're doing with our bodies, our physiology. Are we sitting up straight, our shoulders back, our heads high? All of that is going to affect our emotional state. So if we want to change our emotional state, we can do it anytime we want to. So when our emotional state is not serving us well, we have the ability to change it. One of the habits that destroy happiness is falling into a default emotional state that is sad and letting that control and rule our lives. And we have the power to change that. When we show up to the office in the morning, if our emotional state is, this is going to be such a pain today, and we look at the schedule like, they're coming in. I can't believe that patient's coming in. They're going to be so hard to work on. And we start to tell ourselves if these are the thoughts in our head, and our posture suddenly goes from slumped shoulders to like, this is going to be a long day. and our focus is on all the difficult things in the practice, then that's how we're going to feel. That's going to be our emotional state. We've defined what our emotional state is going to be for that day. But we can change it. We can quickly flip that switch by putting our shoulders back, lifting our head up, smiling, and focusing on the parts of the day that are amazing, and telling ourselves when we see those challenges, you know what, that's going to be a little tough, that patient or that procedure is going to be pretty challenging, and I can do that. I look forward to a challenge. Finally, a decent challenge in my life. Everything's been too easy for me. I need a good challenge today. Whatever we want to tell ourselves, we can. We get to frame our stories, and that's going to change our emotional state. And so if we are defaulting into negative emotional states that aren't serving us well, maybe that emotional state is anger. Maybe that emotional state is frustration. Maybe that emotional state is disappointment. And we want to switch it, we absolutely have the power to do so, and we can change it. So I want you to think about that physiology. And what's interesting is, as powerful as that physiology is, which is really powerful, we as dentists are at a disadvantage because all day long we're working in a small space in front of us with our shoulders a little bit slumped and our head bowed down, which is kind of the physiological posture to feel a little bit down. Now, that's not the only thing that controls that emotional state. We definitely don't have to feel sad every time we're working on a patient, but it does put us at a little bit of a disadvantage that we need to think about it. And maybe between patients, stand up and change our physiology and change our posture. Now, there have been an incredible amount of studies behind this, and behind physiology and the emotion we feel, and even what we can achieve. Some of it even is about power postures. If you think about, the Wonder Woman pose, and there have been studies as people go into interviews or go in to have a difficult conversation and they get into that Wonder Woman pose for a little minute, they feel powerful, they feel confident, and they go into that meeting with confidence and assurity, and they are ready to go, and they're assertive, and they can have a much more successful interview, a much more successful conversation than if they walk into it with their, shoulders slumped, kind of a negative posture. So we can change our emotional state using our physiology, changing the voice in our head, changing whether we're going to listen to the coach or the critic, and then changing what we focus on. So habits, again, habits that destroy our happiness. These habits are going to be focusing on all the things that are wrong. These habits are going to be numbing negative feelings when we feel them, or defaulting to a negative emotional state without changing it and letting that be our default state. We're also going to, another habit that's going to destroy happiness is making it really hard for us to feel good and writing rules in our head that make it really easy to feel bad. So I want you to think about your habits. What are your default emotional habits surrounding happiness? Now, most of these habits are about the emotion happiness. And because that's an important part of the happiness puzzle, it's an important part to talk about. But we talked about in the last episode so much more about living a life of gratitude and finding opportunities to feel gratitude, and even having gratitude rituals in our lives, and also finding a larger purpose in our life, because you're going to need all of that if you want to live a fulfilling life and if you want to find happiness. All right. Thanks for listening. I love this idea of happiness. I love this idea of finding more joy in our lives, because this is going to make a difference in not your life, but your practice also. And there is a direct relationship for how we feel and how successful our practices are going. So if we want our practices to change, we need to change. If we want our practice to be more amazing, then we need to be more amazing. And the first step to that is to feel amazing, to fall in love with our life. And these are the habits that we can change that's going to help us fall in love with our life again. In our next episode, we're going to talk about challenges. How do we face adversity? How do we face really hard things in our life? Because those are going to come up. And that's going to be just a part of a fulfilling life. But how do we go through something that's really, really difficult and still find happiness? All right. So until next time, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again soon.